Daniel Malechuk is the CEO of Landmark Sotheby's International Realty in North Carolina on the coast, of course. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. I'm so glad we connected. I want to thank our mutual friend, Ben Bowen, for the introduction. It's very kind of him. And we talked a little bit leading up to this conversation. We had a conversation about a week or so ago, and I shared how much my wife and I enjoy visiting the coast of North Carolina, specifically Wilmington. So this has just been great to connect with you on several different levels.
Yeah, I agree. Ben's a fantastic human being, and I'm privileged to call him a friend, and couldn't agree with you more about how lucky we are to have the coast of North Carolina here and all the things that it offers.
Dan, you have a pretty interesting story. Real estate was not your first career. And I feel like your bio would be a topic for a completely separate podcast episode, probably a series, to be honest with you. But in a nutshell, could you share for listeners a little bit of your background and what your career was like before you joined the real estate industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a North Carolina native, born and raised, but had the opportunity coming out of undergrad to go into the business world, corporate America. And through that process over, I hate to admit it, but last over 2 decades now, really had the opportunity to see the world through opportunity of really executive leadership of some of the world's largest companies, both domestically and internationally. My career with the German retailer Aldi, and really had the opportunity to understand operations at an early age, helped Aldi expand across the Southeast, and then I moved into an executive role as corporate director of purchasing, so leading purchasing for Aldi across not only the United States, but globally. And that was just in my mid to late 20s, just an incredible opportunity to get exposure to one of the largest international corporations in the world, but also to understand how really things work from a negotiation standpoint and contracts. And I was responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars worth of negotiations for an incredible company around the world. And then my career continued across different avenues of corporate America. And through that, my family and I had the opportunity to move around many times around North America, and for me to continue to travel the world, and always varying degrees. So operations a big part of my career, supply chain and negotiating and contracts. Real estate was always a subset of every career that I had prior to here, or every part of my career I had. And that was something that always intrigued me and interested me. And then over the next, several years, I had the chance to continue to rise in the ranks of corporate America, and eventually became CEO of a firm that I took through an IPO process, originally in Europe and then eventually to the NASDAQ. So really enjoyed all the things that I learned from that time period, and really got exposure to running startup company, running big international companies, running some family-owned in-between companies, and really just learning from every one of those stops along the way before I ended up back home here in North Carolina.
As I mentioned, your career prior to Landmark Sotheby's International Realty is could be the topic for a series of podcast episodes. But thank you for kind of wrapping that up in a nutshell. I know that probably wasn't easy to do. I would love to know, how did you connect with Landmark, and what was the draw there? What was the appeal for that shift in your career?
Really goes back to my youth and childhood. I grew up outside of Winston-Salem in a little town called Belews Creek, North Carolina, not to be confused with Bowie's Creek. And my family was very actively involved in what was called the Christian Family Living Center, and it was on Topsail Island, North Carolina. So my family always volunteered at this religious retreat center, and I'd spend a lot of my summer there and random weekends throughout the year, and fell in love with the coast of North Carolina. So for me, there was always a special part of the coast of North Carolina in my heart, and that was no matter where I was traveling around. I think I've been to 70 countries around the world, in all 50 states. But the coast of North Carolina was always one of my favorite spots in the world. So Once my business career was accelerating to a point where I was blessed enough to be able to think about buying a little small piece of real estate on the coast of North Carolina, back on Topsail Island to bring me back to where I had such fond memories of growing up. And I connected with an incredible real estate agent named Nick Phillips, who was with, at the time, Landmark Real Estate Group prior to the affiliation with Sotheby's International Realty. And Nick and I hit it off really well, became great friends, as well as I purchased a property. And ironically, the very first ever closing of not Landmark Real Estate Group, but the first time that the company transitioned as it affiliated to Sotheby's International Realty was a property that my wife and I purchased. So there was that neat connection that we were the first ever official Landmark Sotheby's International Realty closing, and that was on May 14th, 2014. So well over a decade ago now. And through that time period, Nick and I became really great friends. I was off again around the world in my business career, and I was watching Nick do incredible things as he grew his firm and had the opportunity to continue to connect, vacation with him and his family, and always get together when I was in town visiting the island. And over the years, the opportunity presented itself for me to step in and have the opportunity to take the reins of Landmark over 4 years ago now, and really bring, I guess, a lot of my business experience and thought process to supporting our phenomenal agents here to help them grow their business. And so that's been about 4 years ago now, and it's been just an incredible journey for me to come back home and do something that I absolutely love, which is working here on the coast of North Carolina with the best agents on the coast.
Pretty serendipitous that you were the first closing for Landmark Sotheby's International Realty, with probably, I'm sure at the time, without any idea that at some point you would be part of the organization. That's really cool. I got to go back to what you were saying earlier. It was something you mentioned that caught my attention that is astounding. 70 countries and all 50 states.
Yeah, my dad worked for the airlines growing up, so some people on your podcast may remember the airline called Piedmont Airlines. That's what
Absolutely.
my dad worked for Piedmont. That's what actually took my parents to the Winston-Salem area where he worked there. And I grew up having the opportunity to fly for free on standby. And I remember back in the day when I'd stuck in the back of the 727 with the guy smoking the cigarette in the ass, hey kid,
Sure.
blowing smoke in my face. And I tell that story to my kids and it blows their mind. But so anyways, we were able to travel pretty easily domestically. We never did a lot of international travel as when I was a kid. But that bug of travel was something that, and seeing the world and also having the ability to understand different perspectives has been, I think, a key point of my youth, my college degree, then eventually I got an executive MBA, and then in my global business career. So it was almost a natural link to Sotheby's International Realty for me, is continuing that wanderlust that I have for experiencing more than just what might be familiar here. And so I made a goal as a young man that I wanted to get to all 50 states by 50. And it was my 40th birthday, and I had one state left, and it was North Dakota of all states. And anyways, ended up with one of my best friends who was from there, getting to go ice fishing in January on a lake in North Dakota, catching perch and walleye, and that was number 50. And it's been one of the best blessings of my life, is to experience people, culture, and perspective.
I can't imagine why you left, saved North Dakota for last, but nothing against North Dakota. Lovely, lovely state, I'm sure. Probably not the place I want to visit in the wintertime, but I would love to get there in the summer.
Yeah, and I always tried to make a point when I made it to a state was to do something. You can't just step in the state or whatever, drive through it. You had to do something that was unique or specific to that state. So I thought, okay, ice fishing in North Dakota in the winter. It's just like the little ice shanties and all the things. That's what you do. So I got the authentic experience.
Makes sense. Topsail Island, you mentioned earlier, that's where Landmark obviously has an office there. There are several other offices there here in the North Carolina coast as well. I wanted to ask you, so, and you mentioned also Sotheby's being a global brand, and I think that's worth underscoring as well because it is such a global brand, over 1,000 offices worldwide, and and obviously distinguishes itself as a brand in the luxury space. Um, how would you say that Landmark uh, has distinguished itself there in the luxury space in the North Carolina market?
Yeah, you bring up a good question, and it really starts with our agents. I think that's the thing I enjoy most about working here at Landmark Sotheby's International Realty is I get to work with the best of the best agents. And when you take a phenomenal experienced agent who has the mindset of exceeding the expectations of a discerning clientele, with the luxury focus, and luxury is not a price point, it's the level of service that we provide to all clients, and that doesn't matter if it's a $40,000 lot or one of the multiple record breakers that we do year over year as the highest sale in the state of North Carolina. Our team has done that, and it really comes back to that. It's the ability to focus in on those three words again: exceed the expectations, and that's what our team does. I think it's a big differentiator. We're really focused on quality, not on quantity. We're not the largest firm by volume of agents, but yet our agents are the most productive. I know for sure in the coast of North Carolina. I'd have to look to see if we are in the entire state of North Carolina. I wouldn't be surprised if we are, but our average agent productivity is through the roof. But what that means is, our agents are working smarter, not harder, and really what has been nice to see is the reception that we have received on the coast of North Carolina when you take a phenomenal agent who has that mindset and is experienced and is really focused on that expectation of high level service. And then you combine it with the power of Sotheby's International Realty, and it's unparalleled in the way that we market and our scope and our reach, because that's ultimately, when you're talking with the listing client, what it's all about. We are able to get you in front of the most qualified sets of buyers in the world to generate the most interest to sell your home faster and at a higher price. And that is the value that our team provides with this brand. And so it's pretty special formula is to take the best agents and put them with the best brand, and then watch what happens and watch how their sales explode as agents. But more importantly, they achieve the results for the clients, and then they get recommendations and referrals, and the business grows from there.
On the list of top producing real estate agents in the state of North Carolina, Sotheby's has dominated, I would say. I think it's safe to say for the last several years that I've been paying attention anyway. And I have personally never bumped into or made a Sotheby's acquaintance that I wasn't supremely impressed with. The professionalism of the Sotheby's brokers here in the Charlotte area is outstanding, and I have no doubt that that's the same in your area as well, and with Landmark. And I know that to be true as well of the high country of North Carolina. Some really amazing talent and professionals in the Sotheby's brand serving the high country as well.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks for that recognition. And I think you're honing in on one of the things that we really focus on as well. Again, I mentioned earlier, but it's about quality, not quantity. But we're very deliberate. I use that word often when I'm describing our process of who we choose to affiliate with and to represent our brand. And there's a couple things that are really important. Our culture is really special. We hold that both globally at Sotheby's International Realty, as I speak across 87, 89 countries now, and 1,100 offices and 26,000 agents. But that confidence level that our clients have in a Sotheby's International Realty agent, or even our agents have, to be able to refer business to anywhere in the world to another office, and know that even if they don't know an agent in that office, if they give them a call, that they're going to be met somebody who's an ultimate professional at the top of their game, dialed in with the same mentality of, hey, I want to exceed the expectations of this discerning clientele. And I think our clients have come to realize that it's not just talk, that we back it up with the way that we execute in our transactions, and that's what we aim for. And we really think that's if we were to say that's our special sauce, it's really what we feel sets us apart.
Yeah, and I've definitely found that to be true from my interaction with Sotheby's offices and agents. Let's talk a little bit about the Wilmington market. You have offices, as we mentioned, in Topsail Island, or Topsail Beach, and um, Wilmington, of course, Wrightsville Beach. Where are your other locations?
Yeah, we have Morehead City, we have Ocean Isle Beach, and we have Outer Banks, which is in Duck. And then we also service, of course, Bald Head Island, Southport. And so, really, we're the only firm that serves the entire coast of North Carolina. And that's something that when I got here and took the reins about 4 years ago, made a priority to really expand the firm to the Outer Banks. And it's something that I think brings a lot of comfort to our agents, knowing that internally, they can refer up and down the beach of North Carolina. There may be a client who's looking to buy and they start maybe in the north in the Outer Banks and realize, okay, maybe they want to move further south and hit Emerald Isle, or keep going to Topsail, or keep going to Figure Eight Island or Wrightsville, or all the way down to Sunset Beach. And we actually have, we do a few transactions even in North Myrtle Beach. Wilmington is our biggest market. It's our most expensive properties as well on average, just because we're surrounded by, to your point, I'm actually in our Wilmington office right now. Wrightsville Beach is just across the bridge right behind me. Figure Eight Island just to our north. Landfall, the country club, is just outside of our office right here as well too. So, this is probably our biggest volume producing area as well, but it's the lifeblood of the firm here, complemented by a really strong Outer Banks team, and Emerald Isle and Ocean Isle Beach and Topsail, et cetera.
Bald Head Island and Southport are amazing little corners of coastal North Carolina. I've visited Southport, and I haven't visited Bald Head yet, but I've done quite a bit of research online, and it looks like an amazing spot. Might have to circle back at some point and just have a Bald Head Island and Southport podcast conversation, but share for listeners a little bit about the market there in Wilmington. What's transpired. 2021, 2022 is a lot different than 2026. How have you guys adapted, and what does the market look like in your area now?
Yeah, great points about Bald Head, and I'll circle back to that for a couple seconds. We have some phenomenal agents there, and we do very well in Bald Head Island, and it is a unique market for us, not too far from Wilmington here, but complete different type of market for a lot of reasons. But back as far as answering the question on how has Wilmington market changed, what's the real estate landscape? In 2020, 21, and even the first half of 2022, the market was on fire. We were coming through that post-COVID rush. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, you could sell a home with your cousin Bob, who, may have been a real estate agent for a day, and he could take a half sideways cell phone picture that's blurry, and you may have 10 offers on the first day. I mean, that was the market that we were in. So not to diminish the power of what marketing is, but at that point, the emphasis was not on, okay, I need a quality firm. It was just kind of crazy how quickly things were going. And but what we have seen at Landmark Sotheby's International Realty is there's been a flight to quality over the last 2 years specifically. I think savvy listing clientele are in tune with the fact that, hey, it is a more difficult market than it was a few years ago. And it took a little bit for that mindset to change, right? Because they were just used to throwing something out there and having multiple offers. But as things have changed, our team and our agents have really excelled. In fact, we, in every market we were in last year, accelerated and took significant market share growth with our existing agents. And I honestly think, again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, a phenomenal agent with an incredible brand. And our way to articulate in this market, everything is important about marketing to get your property marketed the right way in front of the right people to get it sold. And, we're blessed to have the highest average sales price and yet the shortest days on market. And that's a power of the way that we market our homes. And so, it is a bit more challenging. Days on market across the board have gone up. Average sales price to initial listing price, there's more of a delta now than there was a year or two ago. So I think it is more important, number one, to price the home well to begin with. And the more turnkey homes are selling more quickly, meaning more move-in ready. A few years ago, even if it was a project, you didn't see a lot of people shying away from that. But where right now, I think it's more of a home needs to be pretty much ready to move in to sell more quickly. Doesn't mean that you can't sell a home that's not completely turnkey, but it's going to be a little bit more of a headwind than we saw a couple of years ago.
It's funny how many parallels I see, and it's probably not just our markets, but the some of the things that you mentioned, the client's mindset for one thing, I think 2024, 2025 especially, what I saw that shift in I think, listing sellers were having a difficult time adjusting that mindset, right, to back to a more realistic market, which we find ourselves in, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I do see, like, now going into 2026, that sellers are do seem to have kind of come back to earth as far as expectations go for pricing their homes.
Yeah, Jeff, one
Um,
thing I wanted to add about the Wilmington market that plays into the conversation a little bit is we have been fortunate in this market. I believe it's 2, if not 3 years running, we have been the number one inbound moving city in the United States of America. And that is a powerful statistic when you think that the number of people moving in versus departing and moving out. And, that's really fueled by a lot of things. Number one, Wilmington's really becoming more and more discovered and on the map as a great quality of life, good cost of living, 4 seasons. But yet, we've had a little bit of a cold snap here over the last few weeks. But right back to 60 degrees today here in early February, late January, and yet. I don't see it slowing down either. And that's really fueled by just outside of Wilmington, you've got growth areas in Brunswick County. Leland is exploding. That's just across the river from Wilmington. But what I love particularly about the coast of North Carolina, but I'll even say specifically Wilmington, is you've got, of course, an incredible, powder sand beaches with warm water, Caribbean blue seas, and particularly that stretch between, call it Topsail Beach, and really Wrightsville, that area of water in the summertime, the Caribbean blue color that we get because of the way that the currents as well as the lack of river feed into it, they're just stunning. Second to none on the coast of North Carolina. I'm sorry, on the coast of the east coast of the United States, with the exception of maybe getting down to South Florida. So I think people are discovering that. They're seeing that, our prices have been reasonable and are reasonable. Taxes are affordable. And yet, we call them the halfbacks. You get people that maybe look at Florida that are from New England or New York, but maybe it's a little bit hot and humid and bugs. And then they come, instead of going all the way back, they may come half back here to North Carolina. And I don't see that slowing down. I think, there's a lot of real estate left to be had. When you fly across the North Carolina on the coast, you see there's a lot of land left for development. And, I think it really is a great market for decades to come, in my opinion.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. The growth of Wilmington was one of the questions I was going to ask you, and that was that I had heard that statistic that it was the fastest growing city in North Carolina, and I think it was the fifth fastest growing market in the U.S. at one point, and wondered if that was still the trend, if Wilmington is still seeing this influx of buyers.
Yeah, and we're seeing, if you ask, okay, and I don't have the statistic, I'm just going to kind of spitball a little bit, but, if we've got 10 buyers that are not from North Carolina, where are they coming from? It's heavy New York. We certainly are getting a little bit of New Jersey as well, too, but we're also starting to see California, Colorado, which is interesting because I don't think that was as much of a pipeline, maybe even 5 years ago, as we're seeing now. And I think the word is getting out that the coast of North Carolina is very attractive for a lot of folks.
It checks a lot of boxes. Wilmington and the coast of North Carolina in general, certainly for my wife and I, it checks a lot of boxes. As I mentioned before, we aspire to have a place there, if not live there full time at some point. But yeah, it's an amazing market, has so much going for it, and I can definitely see the appeal of not only folks who live in the Northeast or out west moving there, but even folks who are in South Florida or Central Florida and may have moved too far south. So
Yeah, a couple things that I didn't talk about that make that appeal from what I hear from a lot of people that are moving here is it's hard to find a spot that, number one, has phenomenal beaches, of course, but minutes away from the phenomenal beaches is a vibrant downtown that's historical. And then you think we have a beautiful river running through downtown Wilmington. And so within a 10 to 12 minute, you've got a beautiful historic river with a historic downtown, and then you can be on white sand beaches. There's not a lot of other cities that have as good of beaches. I mean, Savannah and Charleston come to mind, but it's a little bit more difficult to get to the beaches from those cities. And, I do look for continued investment in downtown Wilmington. I think some of the other cities that are around us on the coast, have done a really great job of revitalizing downtown, and Wilmington's on its way. But I still think there's a lot of upside for more Michelin star type restaurants or James Beard restaurants and more high-end luxury hotels, et cetera. So we still have some opportunity here, but we're doing as well as we are, even as those things continue to materialize in the future.
I the last couple of times that my wife and I have stayed in Wilmington has been downtown, and we love downtown Wilmington. We think it's just a wonderful city, and can't wait to see. We think it's wonderful the way it is, and I think the prospect of more revitalization and improvement is amazing. Sounds really, really great. But we love the Riverwalk. We love the Copper Penny, and some of the other some of the other great restaurants we've dined at there that the names fail me, but yeah, it's a great city. And to your point, just minutes from Wrightsville Beach, and we've stayed in Curry Beach, another lovely place as well. And Fort Fisher State Park is right there, and yeah, it's just really has a lot going for it. I can see the appeal.
The aquarium and so many things to do.
Before I let you go, Dan, something I wanted to chat with you about and just get your uh, maybe a little bit of your input, and that is, and I'll speak for myself. My personal opinion is that I think that the majority of real estate agents, will say more than 50%, aspire to, at least at some point in their career, the thought may have crossed their mind, or they may have the aspiration of working with luxury buyers and sellers and specializing in working in the luxury space. Sotheby's obviously is a global luxury brand. You guys do things at a level that a lot of brokerages can't touch and don't do, and I think it's a really special company. What would you say, what would be your advice or tips or maybe some thoughts for agents who might be, in that state in their career? They've been in the business for a few years and they think, I think I'd really be a great fit in the luxury segment.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I'd like to answer that possibly by thinking about what you focus on expands. And really, everybody may say, oh, I want to do luxury. I'd love to sell a $10 million home or a $5 million home. And that's great. But how? How are you going to get there? And really, it starts with the individual agent. They have to make a conscious decision that that's what they want to focus on. Doesn't mean that you turn your back on your bread and butter. And again, even here at Landmark Sotheby's International Realty, I think people would be surprised to know that 80% of our transactions are actually under $1 million. But it's at 20% over $1 million where we're consistently hitting and taking by far the number 1% of the market share of the 3 million, 5 million, 7 million, 10 million. We dominate in that segment, and that really moves the needle for our agents and our firm. But it starts with a conscious choice, and it's everything with how do you carry yourself? What service level mindset do you have? How are you serving your clients? And then once you've made that decision that I want to be the best, and not in a snotty way, I want to be the best, but I want to be the best version of me that I can for my clients, and how I carry through this transaction. And then really it's at that point identifying what firm is going to support me in that. And look, I hate to say this, but not every firm, every firm purposefully has their own niche and their own focus, but there are very few firms that are significantly defined by luxury. And again, not as a price point, but the level of service and the way that we market. And I think, obviously Sotheby's International Realty being the apex of that. But when we're talking about finding a great agent, that might be the next fit for our firm to help them elevate their service levels. We're very deliberate in that process of understanding and asking these questions. What do you want for you and your career and your family in this time period? And what's really what we look for and what I'm interested in hearing is somebody that says, I want to take my average price point higher. I want to work smarter, not harder. you know, we don't want to have somebody that wants, oh, I want 200 transactions in a year. And that's really not a great fit for us. In fact, we'd say, hey, fewer transactions or the same amount of transactions, but continue to elevate that average price point. And what we have seen, which has been pretty powerful, is, you asked about what did we see in the market in 2021, 22 compared to 26. Well, our firm has grown from, call it about 320 million in 2022 to last year we did over 700 million. So in a 2 or 3 year stretch where the market was flat, if not down 20 or 30%, and a lot of our competitors were down, we have grown substantially. And we've added a few agents. We obviously added our Outer Banks market, as I alluded to before. But really, that growth has come from our top 2 quartiles of agents. Every one of them, for the most part, over the last year or two, has massively elevated their production. And that comes through not only them exceeding the expectation of their clients, but candidly, I'd like to think our team, our focus, my focus on giving our agents the right tools to be able to elevate their service level to their clients. And it's kind of a magical formula. When you do those and you're all kind of in lockstep, what kind of growth can happen. And so those types of mindsets are what we look for. We look for people who have an opportunity mindset of that there's plenty out there. There's a lot of opportunity out there to go and get big listings. And then, really just look for a team or a firm that's going to support them with that growth and luxury mindset. And, I'd find that a lot of people want to work in luxury, but then how many people actually choose to and can? Those are different questions. And that's sometimes, what we focus on when we're talking to people is, hey, what is your mindset? How do you see yourself getting there? And then, you learn a lot when you ask those questions.
And as Simon Sinek would say, why? Why do you
What's your
want to work?
why? What is your why? In
Yeah.
fact, we focus a lot on that, and you heard me saying that. So we're 2 things. We use a lot of him in our philosophy, and then we're a ninja company, which is a selling methodology, which you heard me say what you focus on expands, and that's a ninja term, and that's something that it really is fundamental to who we are. And I love that you brought some of that into the conversation.
Speaking of which, I do have one more, and I didn't prepare you for this question, but I would imagine that you've been an avid reader over the years. Is there a title that that you and your office, your agents, lean on?
Yeah, there's 2. And one, I don't know when this podcast will come out, but we do something really special for our top agents. We call it the Landmark Elite. It sounds a little snotty. It's not. It's just meant to be, hey, these are the best of the best. And we do a little getaway retreat with our top agents and their plus ones or spouses. And we spoil them to a little bit of a luxury day or 2. And I'm about to give them one of the answers to this, one of my personal favorite books in my collection. And it's a simple one. Everybody probably knows it, but boy, is it good. It's Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. What a phenomenal book. And so much of that is about mindset. I mean, that's really the secret of the book is if you focus yourself on what you want to accomplish and actually deliberately focus and think about it and not accept anything other than getting there, you'll do it. And then the second one, that's my all-time personal favorite book. And look, I tell you, I look in the camera eye here and I still continue to get something from it every time I read, and I still struggle with a lot of things in it because I'm trying to continually improve as a human being and a person. But it's Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I read that as a young man in freshman year of college. And I've read that no less than 7 times, and I've got highlights and sticky tabs, but every time I read it, I get something new. And I always remind myself at how terrible I am at some of the things in that book every time I read it and that I need to do better. But those 2 books, and really what they ultimately both come down to is a couple of different things. There's nothing in there that you're going to read and be like, oh my gosh, I've never thought of that or heard of that before. But it's just as plain and simple as it can be to just pause and really self-reflect on who do I want to be and how do I want to get there? And more importantly, what is my plan to get there? And if it's amazing if you actually spend a little bit of time each week of thinking about what are my goals personally and professionally, and then actually writing them down and then putting a few bullet points underneath each one of those plans as far as how will I get there and how will I do that. It's amazing what can happen and how the needle moves. And I'll leave you with this on this question. I've done a lot of things in life. And one of the things that I really enjoy is I'm a basketball coach. And I tell my team, if we get 1% better every day, just 1% on one thing, every time you come to practice, if you focus deliberately on today, I'm going to focus on this, or tomorrow I'm going to focus on that. But that 1% compounds. It's hard when you think, okay, I want to climb Mount Everest, to say, okay, well, how am I going to get from sitting on a chair in Wilmington, North Carolina to climb Mount Everest? It's somewhat, pun intended, insurmountable. But yet, if you break it down into the small activities and actions that will actually get you to where your goal is, which the SMART philosophy of defining a SMART goal and actually sticking to it. And then my last key to success, having somebody to hold you accountable to what you say you're going to do, that checks in with you regularly. Again, it's unbelievable what you can accomplish. And, to me, that's the special sauce in life.
Another title comes to mind from a lot of the points you just made, especially to get 1% better every day, and that's Atomic Habits. Have you ever read that?
I have not read that one yet.
That's a good one. But I will say, Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People, Napoleon Hill and Dale Carnegie. These are, and I'm not 100% positive offhand, but I think you're the first guest on this podcast to recommend both those titles, and they are just absolute classics. And what's amazing about those titles is that they were written, almost nearly 100 years ago.
Yeah, almost exactly. That's right.
Yeah. And the principles, gosh, the more things change, the more things stay the same. They're just timeless principles. Well, you've inspired me to pick both of those back up, because I haven't read those in a while. And I feel like they're the types of titles that are worth rereading at least every year if you can. So I love that. I'll have those titles in the description for this episode, of course. Dan, I want to just say thank you so much for joining the podcast. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man, and I love what you guys are doing there on the coast of North Carolina, and can't wait to meet you in person when I visit next time. For listeners who want to learn more about Landmark Sotheby's International Realty and connect with you and the team, how can they do that?
Yeah, the easiest way is just to find our website, landmarksir, like Sotheby's International Realty.com, or landmarksotheby'srealty.com. So you'll find us there. Would love to connect. If anybody hears this and wants to have a chat or virtual call or a cup of coffee in person, please reach out to me. You can find my name and number. I'm only Daniel Malechuk in the entire world. That is a true fact. So I'm not hard to find. If you want to reach out to me, I'd love to connect.
I'll have the link, of course, in the description as well. Daniel Malechuk, CEO, Landmark Sotheby's International Realty. Dan, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jeff.